There is a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from wondering whether you're doing enough. You wake up, you check your phone, someone has started a new job, someone has graduated, someone is traveling, someone is building a business, someone seems to have figured out the life you're still trying to understand. And for a moment, you forget something important. You are comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Then that quiet question appears. What am I doing with my life? Maybe you've been carrying that question for a while. Maybe you feel like you should be further ahead by now. Maybe you thought this chapter of your life would look completely different. But before you judge yourself for where you are, pause. Because being somewhere different from where you expected to be does not mean you are failing. Sometimes, it simply means you're still becoming. The feeling of not being enough rarely arrives all at once. It usually collects quietly. One disappointment, one rejection, one comparison, one goal that took longer than expected, one person who seemed to move ahead while you stayed in the same place, and eventually, your circumstances start becoming a story. I'm behind. I'm not successful enough. Other people are better than me. Maybe I'm just not capable. But here's something worth remembering. A difficult chapter is not the same thing as a failed life. A book isn't judged by one page, and neither should you be. You may be looking at one unfinished chapter and assuming you already know how the story ends. You don't. There are things you cannot see yet. Doors you haven't reached, people you haven't met, skills you haven't developed, places you haven't been, and possibilities that haven't had their moment yet. One of the easiest ways to lose peace is to believe life has one correct timeline. Finish school by this age. Get the perfect job by this age. Have everything figured out by this age. And if you don't, you assume something has gone wrong. But look at nature. A sunrise doesn't compete with a sunset. A river doesn't rush because another river reached the ocean first. A tree doesn't look at another tree and wonder why it grew differently. Nature doesn't seem embarrassed by its own timing. So why do we expect ourselves to be? Your life doesn't need to look impressive every year. Some seasons are for building, some are for learning, some are for waiting, some are for starting again. And some seasons are simply about making it through the day with your hope intact. That season still counts. Maybe the problem isn't that you haven't become enough. Maybe you've been trying to become someone you were never meant to be. The version of you that never makes mistakes, always succeeds, always feels confident, always knows what comes next, always has an answer. That person doesn't exist. Real growth is messier. Sometimes you take 3 steps forward, and then spend a season questioning everything. Sometimes you discover that the goal you worked so hard for isn't even what you wanted. Sometimes you need to begin again, and beginning again isn't proof that you failed. It is proof that you're paying attention. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to learn slowly. You are allowed to outgrow an old version of yourself. And you are allowed to become without rushing the process. Maybe you've been keeping an invisible scorecard. How much you've achieved, how much money you've made, how many people approve of you, how productive you've been, how far you've traveled, how quickly you've progressed, and every time the numbers don't look the way you hoped, you make the same mistake. You turn a result into an identity. You didn't get the opportunity. That doesn't mean you're incapable. Something took longer. That doesn't mean you're behind. Someone else succeeded first. That doesn't make their success evidence against your worth. Your achievements can describe parts of your life. They cannot define the whole of you. You are a person before you are a resume, a human being before you are a title. And a life is much bigger than a list of accomplishments. For those who find comfort in Scripture, there is a beautiful reminder in Psalm 139. It says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Psalm 139:14. NIV. Notice what that verse doesn't say. It doesn't say, "I am valuable because I achieved everything." It doesn't say, "I am valuable because everyone approved of me." It points somewhere deeper, to the idea that your value begins before your accomplishments, before the promotion, before the degree, before the perfect plan, before anyone applauds. And if today you don't feel particularly strong, that doesn't erase your worth. If you're still figuring things out, that doesn't make you less valuable. If your life looks different from what you imagined, you are still here, still learning, still growing, still becoming. So what do you do the next time that feeling returns? First, step away from the noise, not forever, just long enough to hear your own thoughts again. Second, ask a better question. Instead of, "Why am I not where they are?" Ask, "What is the next honest step for me?" Not the next 10 steps, not the next 5 years, just the next one. Maybe it's making the phone call, sending the application, finishing the assignment, learning the skill, resting, apologizing, trying again, or simply getting up tomorrow and beginning gently. Progress doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes progress is invisible. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to give up on yourself. There is another kind of progress we often forget to count, the progress nobody sees. The morning you got out of bed even though you didn't feel motivated, the difficult conversation you finally had, the application you almost didn't send, but sent anyway. The skill you are slowly learning, even though you still feel like a beginner. We tend to celebrate the finish line, the new job, the graduation, the successful business, the answered prayer, but very few people see what happens before those moments. The ordinary days, the uncertain days, the days when you keep going without knowing whether your effort will eventually pay off. And maybe that's where you are right now, not at the finish line, not at the beginning either, somewhere in between, learning, trying, adjusting, starting over. Think about a seed. For a long time nothing seems to be happening above the surface, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Some growth happens where nobody can see it, and perhaps your life is like that right now. The patience you're developing, the wisdom you're gaining, the strength you're building, the things you're learning about yourself. They may not look impressive from the outside, but they still matter. So don't dismiss the small steps simply because they aren't dramatic. A small step is still movement. A quiet season is still part of your story. And progress doesn't have to be loud to be real. One day you may look back and realize that the season you thought was taking you nowhere was actually preparing you for somewhere you couldn't see yet. And remember this, you don't have to see the whole path to know that you're moving forward. Sometimes, taking one small step today is enough. Give yourself permission to recognize the progress that is already happening. There is something beautiful about being in the middle. You're no longer where you started, but you're not where you're going yet, and that can feel uncomfortable, because the middle doesn't always give you proof. You can't always see the destination. You can only see enough of the road to take the next step, so don't demand certainty from a season that is still unfolding. Don't demand the final answer from the beginning of a chapter, and don't call yourself a failure simply because your story is unfinished. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to have unanswered questions. You are allowed to grow at a pace that doesn't impress anyone else. Your life is not late, it is yours. So, if you've been feeling behind lately, take a breath. Put down the invisible measuring stick. You don't have to become everything today. You don't have to solve your entire life this week. And you don't have to prove your worth to the world. Take the next step. Then another. Let your life unfold. There are chapters you haven't read yet. There are things you haven't discovered about yourself. And there may be beautiful parts of your story that you cannot see from where you're standing today. You are not behind. You are becoming, slowly, quietly, one day at a time. And perhaps that's enough for today.